Welcome to Africa Insight. In this week's video, I'm joined by my colleague Pieter du Preez, who is the senior economist for Egypt. Thanks for joining us, Pieter. And there's been some really interesting news in Egypt around the IMF. Pieter, could you tell us more, our listeners, about what's happening with Egypt and the IMF?
Yeah, Jervin, thank you for having me. So yes, yesterday it came out that Egypt has passed its 7th review of the IMF program. It's also the second last review. Should this be approved by the Executive Board of the IMF, it will unlock about another $1.5 billion for Egypt. They also received another $136 million through the Resilience Fund, but that's probably less of a concern for the North African country. For Egypt, this was a good test to pass. We had two views on that, the one before the war and the one we had post-war. Before the war, we expected them to have a hard time to pass this review, especially given that a lot of emphasis was placed on the divestment program of the government, selling of state assets. 3 years ago, when they started the sale program, the first two phases went very well. The third and fourth phase, unfortunately, did not go that well. So we expected this trend continued. They would have a hard time passing the 7th review. But then, of course, the war in Iran happened. Normally in this economic uncertain times, you have a period where especially private sector investment is quite low. So we expected the IMF to be kind of lenient towards Egypt, given that they will struggle to attract foreign investment for a lot of these deals. But also during the same time, the Egyptian government announced they would put 4 state-owned companies, they would list them. 3 of them is in the petroleum sector, and 1 is in the tourism and reconstruction sector. So these developments, I think, really just put the emphasis on Egypt is doing a good job, and they are still very much willing and keen to go forward with the reforms under the IMF program. And this has allowed, I think, the IMF, just for the time being, to give them the green light and to say, okay, we'll give you a pass this time. So there's one review left, that's for the end of the year. That will also be the last review, and the IMF program comes to a close at the end of the year. At this stage, there is no discussion of extending the program or a new program. I think which is justified, given that Egypt has done really well in this IMF program. So yes, so far this news was quite welcoming for Egyptians.
That sounds very good. It's like a good outlook, considering Egypt such an important country on the continent, a big player. Pieter, can you just maybe just give our view, just a general outlook on what you think, with the war going on, like where the Egyptian economy is going, like, just a general overview, maybe GDP, if there's going to be any interest rate cuts or anything like that. But yeah, just your general take over the next few months.
This war came on, well, there's never a good time for a war, but this is quite unfortunate timing for Egypt. Since 2024, under the IMF program, they have progressed really, really well. They were well on their way to achieving macroeconomic stability early next year, which is really good given the 2 or 3 year time span. Unfortunately, given the proximity of Egypt, yes, they're probably one of the hardest hit countries on the continent. So we have a few hiccups now, higher inflation, an exchange rate that has depreciated quite a bit over the last couple of months. Economic growth to slow down. So all of these kind of developments just puts a brake on what's happening in Egypt. So inflation has now increased, will probably stay elevated for another month or so. And Egypt especially needs to maintain a very high real interest rate at this point in time. That's for them to attract a lot of hot money to the economy. That helps them keep on paying their very steep external funding pressures. So they will probably now, well, we've decided to remove all interest rate hikes for the rest of the year. So the net effect of the war is about 3.3 percentage points higher inflation and 400 basis points less of interest rate cuts. So all of this will really hamper the consumers, especially in Egypt. But given that we only expect this to be a short-term supply shock, we expect the economy to get back on track close to the end of the second half of this year and well into next year. So we expect Egypt to start achieving the targets they set out 3 years ago, about early to mid next year.
Great. I think it's a really good analysis. Thanks for that, Pieter. And I think let's leave it at that. Thank you for joining Africa Insight this week. If you'd like more information on our products or services, please visit our website or socials.